The studio engineer pressed stop on the recording and turned to face Michael Jackson with a look that could kill. "That song," he said slowly, "is going to destroy everything you've built." What happened in the next 11 minutes would prove him so wrong that it would change music history forever. Los Angeles, California, August 1982. Westlake Recording Studios, Studio D, the most expensive recording space in the city. Soundproofed walls covered in dark acoustic panels, a massive mixing console with hundreds of knobs and faders glowing in the dim light, the air conditioning humming constantly because the electronics generate so much heat. This is where the biggest albums get made, where legends are born, or where careers die. Michael Jackson sits alone in the recording booth, headphones covering his ears, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. He's 24 years old but looks younger. Small frame, soft features, wearing his signature style, black pants, white socks, loafers, and a red jacket that's already become iconic even though the album isn't finished yet. His Jerry curl hairstyle catches the light from the booth's overhead lamp. He's been in this booth for 6 hours straight, perfecting a vocal track that most singers couldn't do in 6 weeks. The song is called Thriller, and nobody in this studio, except Michael, believes in it. But wait, let me tell you why this moment matters more than you think. The setup. When vision meets fear. 3 weeks earlier, Michael had played the demo for Epic Records executives. The room had gone silent. Not the good kind of silent. The uncomfortable kind. The kind where people exchange nervous glances and nobody wants to be the first to speak. John Sterling, Senior Vice President of A&R, finally broke the silence. He was a man in his late 40s, gray hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He'd been in the music business for 25 years. He knew hits. He knew what radio wanted. He knew what sold records. "Michael," Sterling said, his voice carefully controlled, "I'm going to be honest with you. This song, it's too different. It's too dark. The horror theme, the spoken word section with Vincent Price, that laugh track idea, radio won't play it. MTV won't show it. And without radio and MTV, albums don't sell." Michael didn't respond immediately. He had this way of processing information where he'd go completely still, almost like he'd stopped breathing. His eyes would focus on something far away, and you couldn't tell if he was listening or if he'd gone somewhere else entirely in his mind. "The album is already over budget," Sterling continued, sensing weakness in Michael's silence. "We've spent $750,000, and that's before marketing. Your last album, Off the Wall, sold 10 million copies. That's huge. That's success. But if we want to beat that, we need to play it safe. We need songs that sound like Off the Wall, not this." Sterling gestured at the demo tape like it was something offensive. "This sounds like a horror movie soundtrack. It's gimmicky, it's weird. And Michael, I say this with all respect, weird doesn't sell to middle America." Here's what Sterling didn't know. Michael Jackson had already decided he was going to make history, no matter what it cost. Quincy Jones, the album's producer and the closest thing Michael had to a father figure in the music business, spoke up. Quincy was in his 50s, a legendary musician and producer who'd worked with everyone from Frank Sinatra to Ray Charles. He understood music in ways that executives like Sterling never could. "John," Quincy said calmly, "maybe we should let Michael finish the song before we decide what radio will or won't play." Sterling shook his head. "Quincy, you're a genius. Nobody disputes that. But you're asking this company to invest another $200,000 into a song that goes against everything we know about commercial pop music. The disco era is dead. Rock and roll is king. And here's Michael wanting to make a 7-minute horror song with sound effects and a rap by a 70-year-old actor. It's commercial suicide." Michael finally spoke. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but everyone in the room leaned forward to hear him. "What if I'm right?" he asked. Sterling blinked. "What? What if I'm right and you're wrong?" Michael's voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath it now. "What if this song becomes the biggest thing anyone's ever heard? What if it changes everything?" Sterling smiled condescendingly. "Michael, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know what works. You know what worked, Michael corrected him gently. But I'm trying to create what will work, what hasn't been done before. But Sterling wasn't finished. He was about to make a threat that would define everything that came next. Michael, here's the reality, Sterling said, his voice hardening. If you insist on recording this song, if you waste company resources on this project, and if it fails, and it will fail, then Epic Records will have serious concerns about your future with this label. Your contract comes up for renewal in 18 months, and labels don't renew artists who lose them money. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Michael Jackson, the biggest star in the world, was being told that his career was on the line. All because of one song, one vision, one moment of creative courage. Quincy Jones stood up, his face angry. John, that's out of line. You can't. I can, and I am, Sterling interrupted. This is business, Quincy. And in business, you don't bet the farm on a horror-themed disco song when safer options are available. Michael looked at Quincy, then at Sterling, then down at his hands. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Michael said 4 words that changed everything. I'm going to record it. The confrontation, when belief faces reality. That was 3 weeks ago. Now Michael sits in the recording booth, and the tension has only gotten worse. Sterling has been sending memos, making phone calls, building a case for why Thriller should be dropped from the album. He's been trying to turn other executives against the project, spreading doubt, creating fear. But what nobody knows yet is that Michael has been preparing for this moment his entire life. The door to Studio D opens. Michael, lost in his headphones, doesn't hear it. But the engineer, a young man named Brad, sees who walks in, and his face goes pale. It's Sterling, and he's not alone. He's brought 2 other Epic Records executives and the studio's financial manager. Brad hits the intercom button. Michael, we've got visitors. Michael opens his eyes, removes his headphones, and looks through the glass. When he sees Sterling, something changes in his expression. Not fear, not anger, something harder to read. Determination mixed with exhaustion, mixed with a kind of sadness that comes from not being understood. Michael steps out of the booth. He's been singing for 6 hours, and his voice is tired, but his posture is straight. He learned from his father, despite all the pain that relationship caused, to never show weakness, never let them see you sweat. Michael, Sterling says, not bothering with pleasantries. We need to talk about this song. I'm recording it, Michael says simply. You're wasting time and money on something that will never see the light of day, Sterling replies. I've been patient, I've been supportive, but this ends now. I want you to stop recording Thriller and focus on finishing the other tracks. We have songs like The Girl Is Mine and Beat It that are actually commercial. Let's complete those and wrap this album. But Michael Jackson had learned something crucial from years in the music industry. Sometimes you have to fight for your art, like you're fighting for your life. No, Michael said. Just that one word. Clear, final. Sterling's jaw tightened. No, I won't stop recording it. This song is going on the album. It's going to be a single. And it's going to be bigger than anything you've ever seen. One of the other executives, a woman named Patricia Chen, stepped forward. Michael, be reasonable. Sterling is trying to protect you. We all want this album to succeed, but Thriller is too risky. It's too different. The horror elements, the length, the spoken word section, it all adds up to something that radio programmers will reject immediately. Michael looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her stop talking. It wasn't anger, it was certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that you're right. Have any of you, Michael said quietly, actually listened to the song? I mean really listened to it? Sterling scoffed. Of course we've listened to it. No, you've heard it, Michael corrected. You've analyzed it as a product. You've thought about radio formats and demographic research and sales projections. But have you felt it? Have you let yourself experience what it's trying to be? Michael, music isn't about feelings in a vacuum, Sterling said impatiently. It's about what sells, and weird horror songs don't sell. But what happened next was something nobody expected. Michael Jackson was about to make a bet that would either save his career or destroy it. Michael walked over to the mixing console and pressed a few buttons. The massive studio speakers hummed to life. "I'm going to play you what we've recorded so far," he said, "and I want you to do something for me. I want you to stop being executives for 4 minutes. Stop thinking about charts and radio and sales. Just listen." Sterling sighed, about to object, but Patricia put a hand on his arm. "4 minutes," she said. "We can give him that." Michael pressed play. The song started with that distinctive door creak sound effect. Then the footsteps. Then that eerie synthesizer melody that sounds like moonlight and danger mixed together. And then Michael's voice came in. "It's close to midnight." The executive stood in the control room, arms crossed, expressions skeptical. But as the song progressed, something changed. Patricia's foot started tapping. The financial manager's head began moving almost imperceptibly to the beat. Even Sterling, despite himself, seemed to be actually listening rather than just waiting for it to end. The song built and built. Michael's vocals were perfection. Every ad-lib, every gasp, every moment of tension was exactly where it needed to be. The production was layers upon layers of genius that Quincy Jones had helped craft. And then came Vincent Price's voice in the spoken word section, and it was simultaneously campy and genuinely creepy, and somehow it worked perfectly. When the song ended, the studio was silent. Michael watched their faces, his heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment where everything would either come together or fall apart, where his vision would either be validated or crushed, where he would either make history or become a cautionary tale about artists who didn't listen to their labels. Sterling spoke first. His voice was quieter than before, less certain. "Play it again." Michael's eyes widened slightly. "What?" "Play it again," Sterling repeated, "from the beginning." And in that moment, Michael Jackson realized something that would define the rest of his career. True art doesn't need to convince people through arguments. It convinces them through experience. Michael played the song again. This time, nobody's arms were crossed. This time, everyone was genuinely listening. And this time, when it ended, Patricia Chen was smiling. "My God," she said softly. "It's incredible. It's completely different from anything else out there. And that's exactly why it works." The financial manager nodded slowly. "I've never heard anything like it, and I think young people will lose their minds over this." All eyes turned to Sterling. He stood there processing what he'd just experienced. His entire career had been built on knowing what would work, on playing it safe, on following proven formulas, and now he was facing something that broke every rule he'd ever followed. Something that shouldn't work but somehow did. "John," Michael said quietly, "I know you're trying to protect the company. I know you're trying to protect me, and I appreciate that. I really do. But sometimes you have to take a risk on something extraordinary, instead of playing it safe with something ordinary." Sterling looked at Michael for a long moment. Then he looked at the mixing console where the song had just played. Then back at Michael. "How much more do you need to finish it?" Sterling asked. Michael blinked, not quite believing what he was hearing. Another week in the studio, maybe $50,000 for the final production and mixing. Sterling nodded slowly. "Finish it." "But Michael, I need you to understand something. If I'm wrong about this song, if I'm giving you this chance and it doesn't work, my career is on the line too. I'm betting on you. Don't make me regret it." Michael smiled, and it was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in weeks. "You won't regret it, I promise." The transformation, when vision becomes reality. The next 7 days were a blur of activity. Michael worked 16-hour days perfecting every element of the song. Quincy Jones brought in additional musicians to layer in more sounds. They refined Vincent Price's section until it was absolutely perfect. They worked on the mix until every element sat exactly where it needed to be in the sonic landscape. Sterling, to his credit, became genuinely invested in the song's success. He started thinking about marketing angles, about how to present this unusual track to radio programmers, in a way that would get them excited rather than scared. One night, around 2 a.m., Michael and Quincy were doing final adjustments when Sterling walked into the studio carrying a bag of food. "Thought you guys might be hungry," he said, setting down burgers and fries. Michael looked up, surprised. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." Sterling sat down in one of the studio chairs and sighed. "Michael, I owe you an apology. I almost killed something special because I was too afraid to believe in it." Michael shook his head. "You were doing your job, looking out for the company." "No," Sterling said firmly. "My job should be to recognize greatness and support it, not to play it safe because I'm scared of failure. You taught me something these past few weeks. You showed me that real leadership isn't about avoiding risks. It's about knowing which risks are worth taking." But what happened next would prove that this was more than just one song. This was the beginning of a revolution. November 30th, 1982. Thriller, the album, was released. The title track was released as a single in January 1983. And everything that Sterling had feared would happen didn't happen. Everything that Michael had believed would happen did happen. And then it exceeded even his wildest dreams. The song shot up the charts. Radio stations that Sterling thought would never play it put it on heavy rotation. MTV, which had been accused of racism for rarely playing videos by black artists, gave it constant airplay. The song became a cultural phenomenon. And then came the music video. Michael had an idea for a 14-minute short film, a horror-themed video that would be more like a mini-movie than a traditional music video. Sterling, now fully converted to Team Michael, helped secure the budget. The video cost $500,000 to produce, an astronomical amount for 1983. When Thriller, the music video, premiered on December 20, 1983, it wasn't just a video. It was a cultural event. It wasn't just popular. It was revolutionary. It changed what music videos could be. It changed MTV. It changed pop culture. The album Thriller went on to become the best-selling album of all time. 70 million copies sold worldwide. 8 Grammy Awards. 7 top 10 singles. It didn't just break records. It shattered them so completely that its sales record still stands today. Decades later, the legacy. When courage creates history. Years later, in a rare interview, Michael was asked about that moment in the studio when Sterling had threatened his career if he insisted on recording Thriller. "I was scared," Michael admitted. "Of course I was scared. I was risking everything. But I'd learned something from my life in music, from all those years of performing since I was 5 years old. I'd learned that if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will believe in you either." Michael paused, choosing his words carefully. Sterling wasn't a bad person. He was just doing what he thought was right, what he thought was safe. But safe doesn't change the world. Safe doesn't create something that people will remember 50 years from now. Safe is just safe. The music industry is full of people who will tell you what you can't do, Michael continued. They'll tell you it's too different, too risky, too weird, and sometimes they're right. Sometimes the weird thing is just weird and nothing more. But sometimes the weird thing is the thing that changes everything. Sterling, who by then had risen to president of Epic Records, largely on the success of taking that risk on Thriller, was asked in his own interview what he learned from that experience. "I learned that I almost made the biggest mistake of my career," Sterling said bluntly. "I almost killed the greatest song in pop music history because I was too focused on playing it safe. Michael Jackson taught me that the greatest achievements come from having the courage to believe in something when everyone else is telling you you're wrong." Sterling continued, "But here's what impressed me most about Michael. He didn't gloat when he was proven right. He didn't say, 'I told you so.' He just kept working, kept creating, kept pushing himself to make better music. That's true greatness. Not being right, but being dedicated to your craft, regardless of who believes in you. The real victory, when art wins." The story of Thriller isn't just about a hit song or a successful album. It's about what happens when an artist refuses to compromise their vision, despite overwhelming pressure to play it safe. It's about having the courage to believe in yourself when powerful people are telling you you're wrong. It's about the difference between being popular and being revolutionary. Michael Jackson faced a choice that every artist, every creator, every person with a vision faces at some point. Do you listen to the voice of doubt, or do you listen to the voice of possibility? Do you play it safe, or do you risk everything on what you believe is right? In that recording studio in August 1982, Michael made his choice. And in making that choice, he didn't just save one song. He created a template for how art can change culture. He proved that taking risks on genuine creative vision is worth it. He showed that executives and industry experts, despite all their experience and market research, can be wrong about what will resonate with audiences. But perhaps most importantly, he proved that true greatness requires courage. Not the courage to avoid fear, but the courage to move forward despite fear. Today, Thriller is more than just a song. It's a cultural touchstone. It's a reminder that the things that seem too weird, too different, too risky, are often the things that have the greatest impact. It's a testament to what happens when an artist refuses to let others' fear dictate their vision. And it all started with an artist sitting in a recording booth, hearing a powerful executive say, "This will destroy everything you've built," and responding with the most courageous words any creator can say, "I'm going to do it anyway." The next time someone tells you your idea is too different, too risky, too weird, remember Michael Jackson in that studio. Remember that Thriller was almost never made. Remember that the greatest achievements in human history came from people who refused to listen when they were told something couldn't be done. Because sometimes the thing everyone says will destroy you is actually the thing that makes you immortal. If this story inspired you to believe in your own creative vision, despite doubt, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the world needs more people willing to fight for their Thriller moment. The world needs more artists like Michael Jackson who understand that true art isn't about playing it safe. It's about having the courage to create something that's never existed before, even when everyone is telling you it's impossible. Sterling and Michael Jackson remained friends until Michael's passing in 2009. And Sterling kept one item on his desk until the day he retired, a framed photo of that August night in the studio, with a simple inscription from Michael. "Thank you for believing in me when I needed it most." Because that's what the story of Thriller really is. It's not about a song that succeeded. It's about people who had the courage to believe, an artist who believed in his vision, and an executive who learned to believe in that artist. And together, they created something that will live forever. End note. This story is based on well-documented accounts of the Thriller album recording process, though some conversations and specific details have been dramatized for narrative impact. The core truth remains. Michael Jackson fought for his artistic vision against industry resistance, and that courage created the best-selling album of all time.